Hey there, stand-up listeners. Whether you're a first-time listener or a full-fledged Patreon member of this venerable podcast production, you won't want to miss our upcoming live event in Las Vegas, March 27th through the 30th. It's the second annual Stand-Up PODJAM, a live podcast event created by Pete Dominic and you, his amazing listener community. You'll learn a lot at this year's event because it's got many of our regular guests you've come to know and love, including health policy expert and author Aaron Carroll, author Tim Wise, and the legal eagle himself, constitutional law expert Eric Segall. You'll also laugh a lot at PODJAM because Maura, Quint, Christian Finnegan, Ophira, Eisenberg, and J.L. Cauvin will be there too. And of course, Pete himself might even tell a few jokes. It's the second annual Stand-Up PODJAM, March 27th through the 30th in Las Vegas. Tickets are available at humanitix.com or click on the link in the show notes now.
Thank you very much, Pete Co, and thank you to everybody who joined the Hangout last night. Over 70 of you were there, including J.L. Cauvin, who doubted our strength in numbers. We had a great time, lots of laughs. I've included the link if you want to watch it, and it's definitely worth it in today's subscriber email. So go check that out. Today, I'm very excited that my guest is Olga Khazan. She is a writer for The Atlantic. She's got a great new book out. It's called Me, But Better: The Science and Promise of Personality Change. So it's very, very important. I can't say enough good things about it. The interview starts at 29 minutes, and I think you're going to love it. But I've got your headlines, I've got clips, and I've got you. So thank you very much for joining me. I'm very happy to have you here. Sorry I'm up late with the podcast. If you expected it earlier, we were up late last night at the Hangout. So sometimes on Tuesdays and Fridays, I just got to rest. And I appreciate your patience with me getting the show done and getting it posted right and up and ready for you to listen to and learn along with me, because that's what we do each and every day here on Stand Up. So let's get it started by looking at what has happened, what has transpired in the last 24 hours in news headlines that I've gathered for you. It's the first Friday in March, so we've got our job numbers, and they are lower than projected, but not disastrous. U.S. hiring falls short of expectations in first full month of Trump term. Jobs report arrives at a turbulent time for the stock market and trade relations is the subtitle of this ABC News article. The U.S. added fewer jobs than economists expected in February, the first full month under Trump, according to government data released. Employers hired 151,000 workers last month, falling short of expectations of 170,000 jobs. The unemployment rate ticked up to 4.1%, which remains a historically low figure. So there you have it. The big story yesterday, though, tariffs. They're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. You know what companies love, what markets love? Uncertainty. Just 2 days after Trump upended North American trade by imposing 25% fees on all goods imported from Canada and Mexico, he announced a temporary reversal. It's real confusing. It's real hard to follow. And a lot of Canadian shops have already pulled U.S. alcohol from their shelves in response to the tariffs. These consequences are going to matter. And so we're going to try to follow it if you can. Apparently, we have scheduled talks with Ukraine. The Trump administration's special envoy, this dick, Steve Witkoff, said today that the U.S. and Ukrainian officials plan to meet in Saudi Arabia next week to discuss an end to the war. The talks were scheduled after Trump suspended U.S. military aid to Ukraine and held that stupid confrontational setup with Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House last Friday. U.S. negotiators met with their Russian counterparts last month. European leaders met yesterday in Brussels to discuss a $160 billion plan to bolster their defenses and proposals to send troops to Ukraine to support a future peace plan. And France's president, Emmanuel Macron, said he's willing to discuss extending the protection afforded by his country's nuclear arsenal to its European allies. So he is gaining strength in Europe, it would seem. A moonlander's fate is uncertain. Athena, a 15-foot tall robotic spacecraft, tried yesterday afternoon to land on the moon. The mission, funded by NASA but operated by a private company called Intuitive Machines, was to bring a drill and a few small rovers near the moon's south pole, but the spacecraft is communicating with the ground. It may have fallen over and it can't get up. just as one of the companies sent to the moon did last year, or otherwise not landed upright. So hopefully they'll be able to figure that out. But if not, I hope it's got a life alert necklace. The first stage of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas expired nearly a week ago, and the hostages still haven't been released. Back-to-back storms could replenish California's water reserve after a dangerously dry winter. A judge in Maryland ruled that Adnan Syed, the subject of the Serial podcast, is not going to return to prison. Many of you probably know that story. I do not. And in the UK, Nigel Farage's right-wing Reform UK party significantly increased its fundraising last year, drawing money from former Conservative donors. That's bad. And speaking of bad, during a live fire drill with the U.S. military, South Korean jets mistakenly bombed a village near North Korea, injuring 15 people. Someone's probably going to get fired, I'm hoping. In Iran, a popular Iranian musician who had been arrested after releasing a song that praised women who rejected the mandatory hijab rule was punished by flogging. So that's where they are at. Butterfly populations are falling in the U.S. That's bad news. FIFA, the World Soccer governing body, is thinking of expanding the 2030 Men's World Cup to 64 teams to commemorate its centenary. So if that's the kind of thing you care about. I know there's a lot of soccer fans that listen to this show. We don't do sports, but I'll mention a headline like that. A federal appeals court yesterday said that Trump can fire a top government watchdog in the latest round of legal fight over the authority to dismiss federal officials. The U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for Washington, D.C. put on hold a lower court's ruling that found that Hampton Dellinger's termination at the Office of Special Counsel was unlawful. The court said it would expedite its review at the ruling, but in the meantime, Dellinger can be removed from his post. The National Institutes of Health was hoping for a judge on Wednesday to block President Trump's administration from carrying out steep cuts to the federal grant funding for research that universities and Democratic-led states warned would lead to layoffs, lab closures, and a curtailment of scientific and medical studies. So as of now, a judge has blocked the Trump administration from carrying out the steep cuts to NIH. Also yesterday, our authoritarian baby president said that he would soon decide whether to revoke temporary legal status for some 240,000 Ukrainians who fled the conflict with Russia, following a Reuters report that his administration planned to take that step. Such a move would be a stunning reversal of the welcome Ukrainians received on President Joe Biden's administration, potentially put them on a fast track to deportation. But I'm sure that's what Putin ordered. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, like, it's not hard enough. What an unbelievably cruel thing to do, but maybe he'll do it. And yesterday, the Senate confirmed, or Wednesday, the Senate confirmed President Trump's criminal defense attorney, Todd Blanche, to take the number 2 position at the Justice Department, where he's vowed to end the kind of investigations and prosecutions that led to indictments against Donald Trump. And finally, all is not well to Social Security Administration, who wrote in a Thursday morning email that employees can no longer read news websites on work devices, because the thought police do not like that. More and more Orwellian every day. And finally, a SpaceX Starship exploded yesterday during a test flight as space launch debris grounded flights in Florida. It's crazy, but that's the truth. That's what happened, and we talked about it at last night's Hangout. It's a pretty bad thing, apparently, because of the chemicals. Aluminum it puts in the air. Kevin Richberg was talking about it. I don't understand, but it's not good. Also, yesterday, the president talked about the 2 astronauts that are stranded on the space station, and he suggested that they have sex. He really did. I mean, they're both married, but he said Trump suggested that the NASA astronauts trapped in space could, quote, fall in love when he asked about their return. And then he commented on Suni Williams' hair and said she has wild hair. He's an absolute psycho and a classless loser, but we knew that. Still, he just never ceases to amaze you with his ridiculous, childish commentary. And those are the headlines that I've gathered for you yesterday. Nobody does it better. That's right. Tell your friends. standupwithpete@gmail.com if you want to send me your headlines anytime. All right, let's get to the audio that I've gathered for you now. First, let's go to the British Parliament. I thought this was amazing. Everybody in Parliament was agreeing with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and agreeing with the consensus that Russia is the aggressor, that Ukraine is the victim, that Zelensky is a hero. That's the way they said it in British Parliament. And you're going to hear from a whole bunch of leaders and MPs, from conservative to liberal. This is a really powerful clip, and I played it last night to Hangout. People seem to react well to it. So here we go.
We must proceed with strength, and that does now require urgently a coalition of the willing. Britain will play a leading role with, if necessary, boots on the ground and planes in the air. Russia is the aggressor. Zelensky is a war leader whose country has been invaded. And we should all be supporting him and not fawning over Putin.
Both the opposition and the government are fully committed to supporting Ukraine and President Zelensky. We recognise that Ukraine is fighting for her survival and fighting to have the same freedom, democracy and sovereignty which all of us here enjoy.
I find myself in the strange and rather uncomfortable position of very much agreeing with the Prime Minister on everything he has said today. And whilst I often take great delight in criticism of the government, I think this weekend he has not really put a foot wrong.
We have to face this era with confidence and with unity across this House wherever we can. I'd invite him. It's been good to have him agreeing with me. We should do this more often.
We were all horrified by Friday's scenes in the Oval Office. President Trump's attack on the brave and dignified President Zelensky left everyone shocked and appalled.
Extremely grateful that we had a Prime Minister who had such a pitch-perfect response.
President Zelensky is a hero. He is a symbol of the bravery of the Ukrainian people.
I thank the Prime Minister for the leadership he's shown pulling together all our allies yesterday.
This government, this House and this nation stand in unwavering support behind him and the people of Ukraine.
Our enemies should know that our Prime Minister has 100% support from us.
I fear that President Trump is not a reliable ally with respect to Russia.
We must keep the military aid to Ukraine flowing. Keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia.
For setting the record straight with J.D. Vance on the issue of free speech.
And the moving scenes that greeted President Zelensky as he arrived in London on Saturday. He was taken aback when the crowd in Whitehall cheered at the top of their voices, and they were speaking for the whole of our country.
His continued strong leadership.
Just echoing the call to thank the Prime Minister for his leadership over these recent days. He has definitely spoken for Britain when he's spoken on the world stage.
Crucial. It's a moral outrage that these children have been taken, and of course we must ensure their safe return.
Where the United States prefers to align itself with tyrants like Putin rather than its democratic partners. On these benches, we've supported the Prime Minister's actions and leadership.
And can I congratulate him on the excellent leadership he's shown on the international stage.
So we must proceed with strength, and that does now require urgently a coalition of the willing.
Wow, there you have it. They seem to be in consensus and together, united in UK, united in Canada, united in France against Trump and against Russian aggression. And it's very interesting and important, and I think inspiring in a way to see that happening. Now let's come back home where it's not so inspiring, but at least you've got a couple of Republican senators who are starting to be critical of tariffs. I mean, I think Rand Paul has been from the beginning, but in this clip from CNN reporter, you can hear both Rand Paul and Tom Tillis starting to back off.
Almost every industry in Kentucky has come to me and said it will hurt our industry and push up prices of homes, cars, and so I'm going to continue to argue against tariff.
Should he back off of it if it starts to hurt the constituents?
When we start losing, you back off. You know, there's such a thing as a strategic retreat. At the end of the day, I think we have more leverage than any other nation, but we got to be smart, and we don't have all the leverage.
Yeah, you got to be smart. You guys are super smart. Well, there's two Republican senators, at least, speaking openly to a CNN reporter. Now here's Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez replying to a reporter's question about the censure of Al Green and the sensitivity of Republicans.
It's really because Republicans they're very thin-skinned and they're very sensitive. and their feelings are very easily hurt, and so they have to vote on censure resolutions.
Let's now go back to a Republican senator. This is John Kennedy. He was on Fox News yesterday. He's a real fool, but I thought this was interesting as he talked to Larry Kudlow, who goes from cable news to government and back all the time.
How do you read it, Senator Kennedy? You happy with it? Does it need improvement, and where?
I think President Trump, on economics and otherwise, is doing very well. But you remember the old saying, the danger of rising high is that the air gets thin. I'm worried about the tariffs.
Yep.
I'm not saying that tariffs are going to cause inflation. President Trump did them in his first term, and they didn't. I'm saying that we just don't know. We're in very obscure territory. We're in uncharted waters. I think if the tariffs do start to cause inflation, I think the president will back away from them. And I'm not saying that I don't trust President Trump, but you know, there's another saying, you know, trust in God, but tie up your camel. You know, I mean, if this starts causing inflation, we're going to have to recalibrate, because I'm telling you, I'm not saying the border isn't important, and Ukraine and the Middle East and culture wars and the Academy Awards and the Super Bowl, all those things are important. But the single most important thing, the things that moms and dads worry about when they lie down to sleep at night and can't, and the thing they expect the president to fix is high prices. And we can do it, but we've got to start. We have started, but we've got to go full speed ahead beginning now.
Yes, sir.
Ugh. Real tough to listen to. Sorry I put you through that. And I'm even sorrier that I'm about to play this for you. But just proof that Republicans don't care about veterans, don't believe the veterans, the thousands of veterans who have been talking to reporters who are angry that they got laid off, this time at the VA, doing important and vital work, apparently. Here's Breonna Keeler questioning Republican and veteran himself. His name is Jim Banks. He's a former congressman, now senator from Indiana. He voted against certification of the results of the election when he had the chance as a congressman. Anyway, he was on CNN yesterday with Breonna Keeler, whose husband is a veteran, by the way, follows closely and is covering the cuts to the VA, where they cut 80,000 people, apparently. This is tough to listen to. I wanted to share it. I thought it was important and interesting. And if you know any veterans, you should tell them to call Jim Banks' office.
The VA is a large bureaucracy. It can be run so much more efficiently. It's not about bricks and mortar and more government employees. It's about the veteran. Put the veteran first. And that's what President Trump is focused on. That's what I'm focused on in the Senate on the Veterans Affairs Committee. We're going to make sure that the VA works better for our veterans than it's ever worked before.
Does it put veterans first to cut people who work on their benefits or who provide them health care?
I'm just not convinced that that's happening. I'm not convinced that that's happening.
I'm
can
I ask you, Senator, are you talking to your constituents?
I hear from my constituents every day. They want the VA to be less bureaucratic and more focused on the veteran. I am a veteran. That's what President Trump is focused on. That's what I'm focused on as well. The talking points of the VA cutting necessary employees who are focused on veterans is bogus. It's not provable. The fact is that DOJ, President Trump, myself, Republicans in the Senate and the Congress, we're going to make sure that this VA works better for veterans than ever before. I guarantee it.
You're aware they cut people from the hotline, right, and then reinstated them. But that there are still a number of key support staff on that hotline who have not been rehired, the silent monitors and other folks. I mean, are you tracking that?
I'm tracking that the VA is a large bureaucracy, and there are ways to make it more efficient to work better for veterans. I can keep repeating that over and over again.
That's direct care to veterans who are utilizing.
There are no signs that the VA is there are no signs that the VA is working less for our veterans today than what it was 45 days ago. President Trump is focused on our veterans, delivering care to our veterans, and we're going to do that. And we're going to do it even more efficiently than ever before.
So you endorse the cuts to key support staff on the veteran hotline. That's
there
something
have not been cuts to key support staff
there
at the VA. The VA is going to work more efficiently, and DOJ is going to recommend and find ways to do that. And Congress. It is true. The 45 days into this administration, President Trump is focused. I'm focused. Republicans are focused on making the VA work better. I mean, the fact is what President Trump did in his first term to provide more community care and better options to our veterans, whether it's at a VA hospital or at a private hospital.
We're talking about cuts to the VA right now.
He did historic and great things to the VA for the VA in his first term.
Sir,
he's going to do even more and greater things for the VA in his second term. I'm not changing the subject. Okay. Your bogus claims. You can't prove that the VA is less equipped to care for veterans today than what it was 45 days ago. The fact is, President Trump's going to make the VA work better than ever before.
I'll send you the reporting. It's really quite easy. It's pretty basic. I'll send it your way. Senator Banks, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yikes! Right? Oh, sorry I did that to you. I apologize. I should really reach out to each one of you individually and apologize to you for having to hear that. And I thought this was a great report. Now, on the other hand, from PBS, the News Hour, I think this was last night, a report to look at the misleading, incorrect claims on DOJ's wall of receipts. Quote, wall of receipts, that is.
Billionaire Elon Musk says his campaign to fire tens of thousands of federal workers and cancel government contracts is in the name of rooting out fraud and waste. His Doge group has posted what it calls a wall of receipts on its website that claims it has saved billions by cutting certain federal contracts. But reports and government documents prove that many of these so-called savings are either misleading or incorrect. Our White House correspondent, Laura Barone-Lopez, has been looking into this and joins us now. So, Laura, what kinds of savings are Musk and his team claiming, and does the math add up?
So Elon Musk and his team on that wall of receipts say that their total cuts equal $65 billion in savings. They base that on contract cancellations, firing workers, and, quote, fraud detection. But as the New York Times first reported, 5 of DOJ's biggest contracts that they say have resulted in savings ended up being deleted from that wall of receipts after outlets pointed out that there were errors. And some of the biggest errors in savings are, as CBS first reported, a USAID contract for $650 million that was listed 3 times. As The Intercept first reported, a Social Security contract listed as $232 million instead of $560,000, and an ICE contract that DOJ listed as $8 billion, when in reality it was $8 million. And it's important to note that that $8 million ICE contract was a credit line. That means that ICE may have never ended up paying out that total $8 million. And some of these contracts were on the wall of receipts were either already paid or canceled under the Biden administration. So DOJ is essentially taking a lot of credit in time for some of these contracts that don't appear to be actually the savings that they say they are.
Shocking, huh? Well, there you go from PBS, and a really important story to follow. I'm glad reporters are covering that, doing a good reporting on that. Kudos to New York Times, The Intercept, and that PBS congressional reporter. All right, well, that's what I've got for you today, except for some laughs. How about that? Let's go back over to our friends at ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live and see what happened last night.
Thank you for joining us here in Los Angeles, California. Have you tried our avocados? Oh, man. We got some damn fine avocados, right, Guillermo?
That's right, Jimmy. Yeah.
I just was looking for something to talk about besides Trump. And you know what? I failed. Donald Trump has been president for 45 days, only 1,417 to go. Today, he set in motion his plan to dissolve the Department of Education. He directed his new Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, the one from wrestling. That's right. WWE co-founder Linda McMahon will supervise the important work of dismantling the Department of Education. Good for him, though. Another genius tactical move. I'll tell you why. He keeps getting attacked by all these smart people. What does he do? He outlaws smart. There will be no more smart. Of course, it's also a win for Linda McMahon. The less educated we are, the more likely we are to believe that wrestling is real. And So interesting how this will work. An executive order to close the department would likely require 60 votes in the Senate. Republicans only have 53 seats in the Senate, so they won't get that, but they will be able to bleed the department out. Their plan, they say, is to turn control over education to the states. In other words, bad news, Mississippi, your kids aren't going to be able to spell Mississippi anymore.
All right, there you go. Kimmel last night on ABC. And before I get to my interview with Olga Khazan, I'm excited to debut a new song from one of my favorite listeners, subscribers, Phil Round, who has been with me for a real long time. Very talented professional musician. Check out the Snake River Band and check out everything that Phil does. Just look him up online. You can watch his stuff. And he's, I guess, semi-retired. What is the deal with you working, Phil? He sends a lot of vitamin N pictures. He lives out there in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. He's a real smart guy, an activist, speaking truth to power, being the change he wants to see, and obviously a real talented artist, musician. He wrote and performs a very a fun song, as always. Here it is. It's called Tech Bros, about the tech billionaires who are taking over the American government and trying to destroy, well, everything that we hold dear. Take it away, Phil.
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be tech bros. Don't let them become an unethical husk. Invest in crypto and idolize Musk. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be tech bros. They'll never get clues about the tech that they use and cower when they see the sun. A tech bro loves spooky dark chat rooms and digital forums. He loses respect for the law, consensus, and quorums. He ain't right, but he's different, and his pride might let him do things to make you lose your mind. If you don't understand him, it's not that you're dumb. You just don't live your life online. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be tech bros. Their views of the future are nothing like ours. They'll trash Mother Earth and go colonize Mars. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be tech bros. It's not evolution, and it ain't no solution. We gotta make things okay down here. Now, tech bros want all of the power that AI might give them. They fantasize perfect, bright futures, and online they live them. They're not like us mere mortals, 'cause they'll never die. They're seen through the fog of a ketamine high. Create their own facts, there is no bias towards blacks. It's a colorblind world when you're white. Tech bros aren't happy to hear our dissenting opinions. They follow their billionaire leaders and become their minions. They dream about spaceflight and code through the cold night, and each dawn brings up a new screen. To hell with tradition or crime extradition. Hand the fate of the world to a teen. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be tech bros. Don't let them be doge bags and give up on us and scream, just speak English or get on a bus. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be tech bros. Let's all take a stand and preserve our dear land. Let's end insurrection, infection.
Yeah, Phil Round, everybody. Love that guy. Very well done, my friend. Thank you so much for submitting that. I love it. And I love you, buddy. All right, well, now let's get to my guest on today's show. She's so impressive, a staff writer at The Atlantic. She's the author of a great new book, Me, But Better, The Science and Promise of Personality Change. She's also wrote Weird, The Power of Being an Outsider in an Insider World, which is a great book that she published just a couple of years ago. And you can read her at her Substack as well, olgakhazan.substack.com. She's on a whole bunch of social media outlets, and I highly recommend you go follow her there at all of them. Okay, I love this conversation. I really love Olga. She's funny, she's smart, and I cannot recommend this book higher to you, to everybody. It's important, and it's already made a difference to me. Let's do it right now with Olga Khazan. Olga is back on the show, one of my all-time favorite writers and journalists, and you have a new book, a new baby, and a lot of news since I last talked to you. So huge congratulations right off the bat for all of it, personal and professional.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yes, I can't believe you're out here promoting this book that you poured your entire life into while also parenting a 1-year-old. I'm very impressed.
I'm very tired, but thank you.
I'm sure. But that wasn't one of the things that you got into this for in terms of changing that about your life, changing your personality in terms of your exhaustion. That's probably something new. But you did decide to have a baby, which is a big change.
Yeah, I would say, the personality change project that I undertook, I think, got me to a point where I decided to have a baby, which is something that I had waffled about for basically a decade at that point. So it did in that way get me closer to get me all the way to yes, actually, on the baby having issue.
I love your work because it's both personal, but also scientific. Me, but better. The science and promise of personality change. And I got to start with the obvious, that a lot of curmudgeons, I guess you get to a point in your life. I feel like it's the kind of thing you get to a point in your life where you say, people don't change and you can't change. Let's just start there. That is not true, is it?
People do change. We all change. Even the people who say that people don't change will change. Almost everyone changes on at least one personality trait over the course of their lives, according to research that's followed people over many years. And most people change in these sort of predictable ways. They become more conscientious as they get older. They become less neurotic, but we also change in all different directions, kind of individually.
What about the science around what the laymen and women refer to as nature versus nurture? Because people have a pretty hardwired idea about that too. You're born this way and your environment, your upbringing can change you a little bit. But the thing that I find fascinating, and I'm sure I know there's some science around this studying siblings, is that if you're like me and you have 2 kids and you come from multiple siblings, right? Anybody can anecdotally say, I am like my sibling or I'm not. We have 2 daughters raised in the same house, super close. Couldn't be more fortunate about how close they are, but they're extremely different. They look different. They are different in all the ways. So anecdotally, I'd say that is nature. But nurture apparently has a lot to do with it. And after reading your book, I realized there's a whole bunch of science. How good is it?
So what you're picking up on is exactly correct, which is that we all get genes, obviously, from our parents, but it's not like we're like this direct copy of our parents and we're exactly like them. Then everyone would be the same forever. Instead, we get these genes and they get combined in these unpredictable ways. And that's only the genetic component of your personality, which is only about half. Because there's this whole other component that is influenced by the environment. So it's things like, do you go to college? Did you get married? Who are your friends? What are your hobbies? Individual things that are up to you and your environment that influence your personality in various ways.
And wasn't there some study that looked at kids in terms of how they turned out, and they turned out completely different, or what was it? I don't know. I don't have my notes.
Yeah, siblings are not similar to each other. Like they're basically as different as 2 random people that you could pick off the street.
Yeah, that's what it was. They can be as different as 2 random people, even though they grew up in the same household and had the same parents. That's crazy to me to read.
And the same genetics, yeah.
And the same genetics. Most importantly, the same genetics, which disproves all of it. Your book is just I said it in the intro, as a person who spent most of my life doing stand-up comedy. You're so funny. I laughed out loud so many times in reading this book. And not that I needed to be reminded because I've been reading you for a long time, but a great writer, but the humor makes it all so much better. And you're constantly looking at it through your own experience, because a lot of this, you include your own life. Tell us about how you wrote this. You went on your own journey and took on a year-long experiment. And then we learned so much about you, all the intimate things about your life, your insecurities, your vulnerables, and of course, the personality characteristics that you wanted to change. So a little bit more about how you took this on and what you did.
Yeah, a few years ago, I noticed that though my life was not bad, it was actually quite good. I often would just melt down over tiny things that would aggravate me throughout the day. And this is the kind of stuff that happens to all of us: getting a bad haircut, getting stuck in traffic, getting an annoying message from my boss. I would just totally fall to pieces when all of these things would add up and add up. And I would be like, my life is horrible. I hate everyone. I would just want to have Netflix and wine time by myself. And I was like, wait, is my life horrible? Or do I just have this tendency to see things in the worst possible way? So as I started to learn more about personality change, I realized that personality and personality traits are at the root of so much of what determines our daily mindsets and behaviors. And it determines whether we can achieve our goals and whether we can live life the way we want to live it. So that's why I decided to go about solving this existential crisis through personality change.
I have the one stupid assumption I make. It's just really not fair and it's stupid. But I look at someone like you and other people in your lane, journalists and writers who very highly educated, super smart people. That's what I would put you in, this category of super smart people. And I say, Olga can't possibly have the types of anxieties and concerns that other people that I have, because I'm not as smart as Olga and she must figure it out. I know that's dumb, but I'm sure it's not that uncommon. I also feel like I do that with a lot of people who I think have financial security. They can't be worried about anything because as long as they have enough money, that's the root of all of our problems, which is also super naive and dumb and ignorant, but I do it. What do you say to those kind of silly assumptions? You do it too, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that I'm smart, but I am definitely not an exception to this. When I took my first personality test, so I was following this like scientific personality testing website throughout this whole experience to track my progress. And the first personality test I took, it said I was more neurotic than something like 97% of the population, which in neuroticism is like anxiety and depression. So I was like, I had my same job that I have now. It's a great job. I had my same partner that I have now. I lived in the same house that I do now. I had all these things going for me, but I was still very anxious and I wasn't appreciating it. And I think that's true for a lot of people. The more you have, the more you stand to lose. And some of these like ways of thinking about your circumstances and your emotions that were maybe protective at an earlier age or an earlier time, they can build and build as you have more stressors to deal with.
I love the way you write about your husband. He seems like the man I want to be, by the way. Like he seems like such a calm and confident and cool guy. And I also like him because he allows you to write so much about him. But you also get to judge and probably run all kinds of things past him when it comes to personality. And you talk about how different his is than yours as well. Break it down for us. These personality characteristics. What are we talking about? What does it mean, personality?
Yeah, just to name one, neuroticism, I'm very high on that one. He is very low on it. I actually don't think he's ever felt anxious. Like he doesn't know what I mean when I say that I'm anxious. He's just, I don't know. I think we'd probably have to go back to his teenage drug use, but he's very relaxed. So that's one trait. So then we have openness to experiences, which is like imaginativeness and creativity. We're both really high on that one. Extroversion versus introversion. We like how sociable you are, how outgoing. Which is like warmth and empathy and trust in other people. He is also very agreeable and I am not, or at least I wasn't when I started. And and then neuroticism. And so those are the 5 traits that everyone has that makes up your personality.
And so you told us about what, after taking these personality characteristics, you identified as your personality, and you talked about what your goals would be to change. One of them was agreeability. The other was the neuroticism. But you also didn't. I think it's important that you say and you write and help us. It's so important. It's such an important book to change the things that we don't like about ourselves. But you say you want to keep the things that you do. And for you, it's things like you're a hard worker and you're organized, et cetera. So what did you want to change?
Yeah. So one of the first things I wanted to change is actually my level of extroversion. And this is controversial because I actually identify still as an introvert. And a lot, there's this tendency of like, I'm an introvert. I need quiet time to myself. Leave me alone. And I do need some quiet time to myself. But I think what I was finding, and the research aligns with this, is that if I could occasionally go out and talk to people, socialize, whatever, just hang or do things in groups, I actually felt better than if I spent that time by myself. That sometimes spending time by myself wasn't the solution to feeling down or isolated. The solution was actually to get out and connect with others. So that was like a pretty big realization for me that actually is supported by the science.
You did all kinds. I can't believe you did all this. Like because you wanted to change that quality of and become more extroverted. You did all kinds of pretty weird. I shouldn't say weird. That was your last book. But interesting, brave, courageous things for someone like yourself. You joined an improv class. You volunteered at a place. You had a party, which I thought that section was hilarious to read and relatable. What are the things that you did and how did they work?
Yeah. So you got it there for extroversion, just joined a bunch of groups and tried to get out as much as possible. I would say the most effective thing for that was the improv, actually, just because I think, and this is maybe true of a lot of journalists, you start to get in a place where you like to really control conversations because you're always interviewing people and you like to have this very predictable back and forth. And improv, I don't know, you're probably familiar with it, is not that. It's very chaotic. Yeah. People just throw things at you. You got to respond in the moment. Sometimes you don't even really quite hear what's going on or know what's going on. And but you still have to make a scene work with someone. And that to me was very good practice for what it feels like when a situation is out of control, but it's still okay. It's still all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. We're all going to be done with the scene after 4 to 5 minutes. But it was just very good. I think I needed that kind of chaotic fun time in my life.
I feel like there's a way to take the converse of everything we learned in your book and apply it from the top down. I'm not sure how effective it would be. Just you mentioned improv. If a company or organization, and they sometimes do, brought in improv teachers and you did improv workshops, it would help folks at work. And I would say that would be true of a number of the other things that you prescribe and suggest. I wonder if some people reading your book will want to apply a lot of these personality changes or efforts to their organization, to their family, much less their company. Did you think a lot about that? If you wrote about that part, I missed how it would be applied.
I didn't write as much about corporate stuff, though I think a lot of this could be applied in a corporate setting. So one of the things that I did that I thought would be particularly effective for that is I went to this conversation workshop in London. And it was a little bit strange, but one of kind of the most interesting takeaways from that is that a lot of times when we're talking to people, you don't actually learn much. You get a list of facts from them, but you don't actually understand what's motivating them or what any given thing means to them. So a lot of that was just learning how to ask the kind of questions that will get at the deeper importance behind what someone is saying or doing. And it made me think that if you're having a conflict with someone at work, applying some of these techniques could really help get to the bottom of those things faster, because instead of saying, let's do it my way, let's do it your way, you could start to get to, okay, why is this important to you? Where is this coming from? Where are you coming from? And I think we just don't naturally do that. It didn't feel natural at the time.
You talk about how many different styles and studies there have been on styles of conversation too. I mean, you say you took this workshop in the UK, which made me laugh because I bet you it's different in the United States. A workshop on. It
was really interesting because they were really reserved, I would say, compared to Americans, especially I'm from Texas, and it just, the vibe was so different than what I would expect of that kind of setting. And it was everyone would say the barest amount. I don't know. I felt like everyone was holding back a little. Maybe it's just a real thing.
Yeah, they're more private. We just throw everything out there. That's a pretty sweeping.
I was definitely the most talkative person at the workshop. Really? And I was I feel like the lady's going to kick me out for talking too much.
It's American journalists. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Brilliant. Okay, you talked about extroversion, what you did just a little bit. You got to read the book if you want it all. Neuroticism is the one that probably most of us, you know what, maybe define it. I think these words need real definitions, because I had no idea that I had dealt with some depression in my life, or that it might be underlying at times, because I thought it was more anxiety. And I never wanted to say that I dealt with depression. And then I still have a hard time with that connecting to that idea, or I think that when I deal with it, it's very circumstantial. So I think unpacking what these words mean, they mean different things to different people. But talk to me about neuroticism and what it is, what it was for you, and how you jumped off the cliff to attack that one.
Yeah, so neuroticism for me was mostly anxiety, but the trait itself encompasses both anxiety and depression. And it's basically like having these really negative thought patterns, right? Just like everything is the worst, nothing ever works out. You probably know the drill. And the way to really overcome that is, according to all the research on this, is yes, to focus on positives in your life and like journal and be grateful. But like the thing to do is to meditate. And people don't like to hear that. They're like, I hate meditation. I just want to sit there and be anxious. And I did too. I really didn't like it at first. I actually never really got to like really liking it, but it was effective for me. My neuroticism did go down through this meditation class that I took.
I don't have time to meditate. I'm busy catastrophizing.
I know. I felt the same way. Now I don't have time to meditate because I have a kid, but yeah.
Yeah, I hear that from so many good friends of mine. I've been meditating for years, and I started because I got recruited by the TM organization, the David Lynch organization, because they did that with a whole bunch of us in media. And he did one-on-one. He trained me, and fine, it worked. He gave me the mantra. But the whole thing was I didn't like it. It was a little uncomfortable. It was a little too forced. But then I changed. I, like you, follow and am friends with Dan Harris, and I learned so much from him. And I love that you include the loving kindness meditation and Sharon Salzberg's work in there, and that you did it, because that is really very helpful to me. I think about a person I hate. Most days I think about a person I hate in my meditation, my loving kindness meditation.
Wow.
And it has really made a difference. I still hate this one guy a lot. But I sometimes I throw him in there, and others as well. So I'm so glad that is the one that you landed on, and the one that the science has a lot to say about meditation, because it certainly has made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, you can really do any kind. And my thing was way too long. It was like 45 minutes long every day, but you can do 10 minutes or 15, however long.
Yeah. So I would just say, try a bunch of different things, which you did for the research for the book. And I think that you have to find the thing that works for you. But I don't have a lot of patience for people who say they don't have time for these things. I don't have a lot of patience for people who say they don't have time for things, period. Because I always feel like, oh, you're super busy, huh? I don't do anything.
Yeah.
Around. I just stare at the wall, especially to someone like yourself who's got a little kid. Oh, I don't have time. What, really? I have a 1-year-old, and I found a way. I'm much more judgmental.
With some of this stuff, I found that if you just do it, if you take the time to really do it, it sets up your day to be more productive. Especially some of the stuff that I did with conscientiousness and what some of the other people that I talked to did. So conscientiousness is the trait that's like being organized and diligent. A lot of that stuff is like habits that if you set up, you actually become more productive, even if there's a little bit of work at the front end.
You are good at that, so that wasn't one of them that you had to tackle, but I am not good at it. I work as hard as anybody and as many hours as everybody, but I don't think I'm as efficient and always as productive, and certainly not as organized. I'm a mess. I've got papers everywhere. I've got reminders. I'm the king of the Post-it note. Thank God for Post-it notes, or I would forget things. So tell us a little bit about how you can become more conscientious. What's a tool for that? What works?
So the big thing that I kept hearing over and over again was decluttering. So decluttering your possessions, just throwing as much away as possible. If it's papers, take pictures of them, throw them away, get a filing cabinet, file stuff, but mostly throw it away. And that kind of includes like your obligations too. Like a lot of people that I talked to found that they were trying to cram too many things into too little time. And then it led to feeling frazzled or letting things fall through the cracks because there wasn't technically enough time to get everything done. And so part of it was just like trying to say no to stuff that's not like a high priority so that they actually can complete like the tasks that actually need to be done. I know that sounds really simple, but that is something that like really helped a lot of the people that I talked to get to conscientiousness.
No, I love it. I just find myself decluttering all the time. It just gets cluttered and I declutter. And I get depressed or frustrated that at 49, this is still a thing. I get embarrassed is the best word. Embarrassed that that I'm still messy, that I still have stuff everywhere. It's embarrassing to me. I'm a grown adult human and I still have shit everywhere. I sometimes can't find things, or I even still forget things. I've got 2 adult daughters that I'm begging to not make the same mistakes and fall in the same habits that I do when they're busy and successful, and there's a lot of demands on their time. So it was good to read the book and know there is hope for people like me.
Yeah, absolutely. Decluttering is one thing. And then the other technique that I saw that was effective in that, for that trait, is this thing called episodic future thinking, which is just imagining very specifically what the positive outcome looks like, or what the outcome looks like if you stay on the track that you're on. So this is like very helpful if you really don't want to make that phone call, send that email, get up and go for that run, do whatever it is, the hard thing that you have to do to reach your goal. It's this strategy of picturing yourself. Okay, so you've trained for the marathon, you're crossing the finish line, all your family is cheering for you, you're getting the little tiny cup of water or whatever. That can really motivate people whenever things feel really difficult, which they often do with conscientiousness.
I feel like it's a perfect example, but I also feel like you aren't a marathoner because you referenced the little cup of water as being the prize. But am I wrong?
I'm not a marathoner. I'm sorry. I have not actually run a marathon. I barely run, but yeah, I guess the little cups of water along the way.
Either way, I love it. Okay. You also worked on trying to be more agreeable. You mentioned earlier in your relationship, you're the less agreeable one than Rich, your husband. And I need to work on that too. So to say the least, what is that about? Define it. What does it mean to be not agreeable, disagreeable in life, in your relationship? And what do we do to become more agreeable? Because I remember reading this phrase. I love this Richard Carlson. He's sadly passed away, but he wrote How to Be Happy No Matter What, and How to Sweat the Small Stuff and all those things. And there is this chapter on relationships, I think, and it's, would you rather be happy or right? Olga, I would rather be right.
Me too.
So bad. And then I didn't have any issues for a while. And I told my friend who gave me the advice, and I was like, yeah, it's been going great. I haven't had any issues. And then do you want an award? So what is the answer? How do you identify it? And what are the solutions?
Yeah. The people who would rather be right than happy are disagreeable. And I don't like that. Like, we can go to bed mad at each other as long as he sees the Wikipedia page that proves that I was correct. So disagreeableness is what it sounds like. You're prickly. You have strong opinions. You think about other people, but they tend not to be as important to you as you are. You're not like a cuddly Care Bear. And this one is really hard to change. There was that tweet a few years ago that's, I don't know how to tell you that you should care about other people. And that is the problem, is that it's very hard to get people to care about agreeableness or be more agreeable. One thing that I found is that helped me be less angry at my partner in particular is to try to have more empathy for him when he was doing something that made me mad. This was something that came through in an anger management class that I took, and also weirdly was a word of advice from my therapist. But often I found that when I would get mad at him, it's because I didn't totally understand what he was going through or what he was thinking when he did whatever the offense was. And so getting a better sense of that actually turned down my anger a little bit, because it didn't seem like it was like he was doing something to hurt me. It made it more, reasonable or rational.
Yeah. That's really helpful to think about it that way. And speaking of drugs, there's a section in there, huh? What was your experience with, and what was your journalistic idea of them before? I feel once Michael Pollan writes a book, everybody's like, all right, let me take a look at this. It must be credible. Oprah's over here holding the book now. But we're talking about psychedelics, and you have some good research and some interesting thoughts about it. So what was your experience? What were your thoughts ahead of time? What did you learn?
So psychedelics are really the key to openness to experiences, which is this very weird personality trait that's basically like being more open to things, like up for whatever, open to new experiences and people and adventures and things like that. So one thing that seems to be coming through in the research is that when people take psychedelics, that increases their openness to experiences for at least maybe a few months. And for whatever reason, that increased openness helps them get over their past traumas, if done in a correct way with like therapy, and it's all official and guided and all of that stuff. Don't just do drugs on your own. But for some reason, this openness is like unlocks the key to like getting over trauma. And I talked to people who like really did have this experience. Like they took MDMA, huge whopping dose of it. They had been through some really horrible stuff, before, took this MDMA, saw like incredible visions and just stuff. And like, they're so connected and saw themselves as a child and saw this and saw that and felt all these like incredible things, and then didn't feel traumatized anymore by their experience. I thought that was like very hopeful and uplifting. But I will say that the studies that I'm talking about were done by MAPS, which recently got in hot water over some of their research practices. It's not that the whole studies are like invalid or like this doesn't work, but it's more like they just there's some questions about basically how they conducted these studies that raised eyebrows. So it made me a little bit nervous about recommending this on a larger scale.
Have you ever anecdotally talked to somebody who went on a guided trip with an expert who had great regrets though? Cause I feel like everybody's the kind of thing, behavior determines the way we talk about things. If you have a good experience, the way that you talk about it, and this, maybe especially with drugs, just proselytize about it. But I feel like every single person I talk to about it, and now that you and I are talking about it, I'm going to hear from a whole bunch of listeners are like, dude, amazing. I saw my life. I saw my childhood. I saw everything in a different way. And I'm a changed person. I've heard that almost exclusively for people who take guided trips. So I'm sure there are plenty of, and I'm sure I'll hear from people now that say, what didn't work for me. So what did you hear? What did you learn just anecdotally? Did you do it?
So I have taken mushrooms in the past, like a very small dose, not for this book, just a few years ago. And I will say that they did not really do anything for me. I did have a trip. I went outside and colors seemed more colorful and nature seemed more naturey, but I wasn't like, whoa, this is the answer. I was just, okay. So I've heard of underwhelming experiences. I've had an underwhelming experience. I've heard of some bad experiences that people have had. But it really, like the stuff that I'm writing about in the book is for people who have like really severe trauma. So even if they take the drug and there's some negative side effect, that's still better than whatever they're dealing with.
And I've heard that anecdotally too, but you can even quote cure trauma, treat trauma and cure trauma. People can be almost free of it at times through not only this and other issues. So just to give folks hope that are dealing with that, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. The woman that I talked to for this chapter did feel like she was cured.
It's amazing. What was it that your meditation teacher told you that saying that stuck? I was in the grocery store listening to an interview you did about the book, which we're talking about, Me, But Better. And I heard it and I stopped my cart in the beans aisle. I was like, oh, that's good.
She would always say things happen that we don't like. Was that it? So that to me, for some reason, was so mind-blowing because I always thought that I was responsible for making everything happen in a certain way or like making everything go perfectly. And then when she just said, sometimes things happen that we don't like, I was just like, oh, she's right. Like everyone goes through dumb BS and like stuff they don't want and stuff not working out. And that's not your fault. And that was, I don't know, that was like, I think the first step to my like healing journey in air quotes.
I love it. I've learned so much from reading Buddhism and Stoicism over the past few years. It's supposed to be part of my daily practice is reading philosophy, or specifically I've been selling Pema Chodron, the Buddhist priest.
Oh yeah.
And things fall apart. And even more specifically for me, this book, Taking the Leap, it's all beaten up. I got to buy a new one. It's all underlined. I get reminded of different practices, different ideas, and so on all the time. How much of changing your personality when it comes to anxiety, worry, and depression do you think reading, because reading your book has made a huge difference to me. Reading books like yours and the ones I'm mentioning make a huge difference to solving these personality issues, no?
Yeah, I think reading can be a huge part of this. Like a big part, especially for the traits of neuroticism, for example, it is so mental, right? It's all about your mindset and how you think about things, which is why in some ways harder to change than something like extroversion, which is just, okay, go out and talk to people. you really do have to like think about things differently. And for me, I really connect with books and with writing in general. And so for me, it's always, I don't know, it's always something that helps me. And if there's a message in a book that really resonates. Honestly, in my book, I feel silly about this, but I quote David Axelrod talking to Dan Harris and saying, all we can do is all we can do, which just means you can do your best, but you can't do more than your best. At a certain point, you have to give up and to me, because I'm such a control freak and an achiever, that is like a helpful mantra that I tell myself all the time, even though it's not from Pima Chadron or whatever.
Yeah. Say what you will about anything that people know about David Axelrod. My understanding is he has a special needs kid. And I'm always interested in talking to people who have kids that are on the spectrum or special needs of in any way, because it's just that much more maintenance and challenging. So coming to the conclusion of all we can do is what we can do is probably something a lot of folks that have that kind of situation have to deal with, that they're taking care of somebody else. There's just so much you can control about your own personality. You can't necessarily control somebody else's, which I guess is probably another good question. How do I control other people, Olga?
This is, so people keep asking, I was like, I should have written a chapter that's like how to change other people's personality. It's really hard. You really can't. This is the kind of stuff like the person has to be ready for change, and you can't change someone who doesn't want to be changed. That's all true here because it's work. It's a change in habits, behaviors, and thinking. You can drag them to improv class, but you can't make them zip zaps up.
Do you think that we should all take, and do you have like links to the personality tests that are effective? There's all these different personality tests. I just don't know which ones are helpful and accurate and to identify our personality traits, many of which you write about.
Sure. Yeah, you can go to personalityassessor.com, which is a website that was created by the professor whose research is like the backbone of the book. And if you can't find that website or don't want to, just find a test that's the IP. I think there's like one that's 120 questions and one that's 300 questions. So the IP is like what he uses, and it's like the standard.
What does the test tell about someone who lies a little bit on the test?
So a small number of people do lie, but actually most people have a pretty good sense of their personality, and they don't tend to lie. But yeah, if you're trying to show like your boss how extroverted you are or something, then you might lie.
Right. No, if you're trying to actually make an improvement in your life, be honest. No one else. It's not for anybody but you. So in the end of this year-long experience in writing and publishing this book, you personally, how have you been able to maintain the improvements or changes that you wanted to make and that you have made?
I think one big change that I've made, so I'm a new mom, and I think that first year, honestly, like all the years of parenthood can be isolating because it's very intensive work with someone who doesn't talk. And I think I would have approached it completely differently before this project. I think I would have just focused on me and the baby and just isolated further. But instead, I've really tried to make a conscious effort to reach out to other moms, meet up with other moms, learn from other moms, just make more connections, because it's like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's good. Even if we just have some dumb play date that's 35 minutes and our kids like pull each other's hair, it's still better than sitting in our house and singing Baby Beluga again. Like I don't know. To me, that's been a big change, is that I just saw like how important it is to have that kind of community.
I love it. I love it very much. The book is for everybody, right? Who's the book for?
Anyone, people who are interested in science, people who like funny writing. Yeah. People who like me, people who don't like me.
Everybody likes you, I'm guessing. I just pitched it to somebody else who wasn't actually familiar with you, who's definitely going to reach out, because I've been following your work forever and always been a big fan of your writing in the Atlantic. Of course, your last book, which I think is probably still selling a lot of copies, very important. But this one is a game changer, and it's going to be for a lot of people because of your approach. But yeah, I gotta say, for me, it was just like the easiest thing to read because I laughed so much and really got to like you even more than you did. And I really want to meet your husband. I actually think I want to marry him. I know that sounds weird. He sounds so great. Or just spend some time with him and pick up on it. I want to go surfing with you guys. It's great. It's a great trip. It's a great read. And I learned a lot. Congratulations to you. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Well, there you go. Olga Khazan, I hope you like it. I hope you like the book. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And I hope you'll go tell her that you heard her right here on Stand Up. That would mean a lot to me. Go buy it. Go subscribe to her Substack and follow her on social media. Let her know you heard her here. And write a rating and review of this show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. Subscribe on YouTube. You can watch that interview on YouTube at youtube.com/standupwithpete. All right, that's it. I'll try to talk to you tomorrow. We'll see. But hopefully you have a great, relaxing weekend and find some joy and find some peace from all the madness. Thank you so much for supporting me this week and whenever and however you do. All right, that's it. I'm done. Bye-bye.